790 days of silence, the Piers Morgan controversy and royal accountability. 790 days. That's how long it's been since Piers Morgan penned that vile, toxic piece in the Sun tabloid, a publication already notorious for its gutter journalism, in which he had the audacity to allude to how the royal family could allegedly have Prince Harry bumped off, murdered in plain English. But Morgan didn't stop there, did he? No, he went further, expounding in grotesque detail about dismembering and incinerating Harry's body, as if he were writing some sadistic fantasy rather than commentary about a living, breathing member of the royal family. And what has been the response from King Charles III and Prince William in all those 790 days? Deafening silence. Complete, utter silence. Not a word of condemnation, not a statement of disgust, not even the most tepid of rebukes. And let's be abundantly clear about what that silence means. Silence is complicity. When you fail to denounce threats of violence against your own son, your own brother, you become complicit in the normalization of that violence. Their silence speaks volumes. It tells us exactly where their priorities lie. And apparently, protecting Harry isn't among them. The original article, 790 days, have passed since Piers Morgan unleashed that vile, toxic piece in the Sun tabloid. An inflammatory screed that didn't just cross lines, but obliterated them entirely. His article contained shocking allegations and thinly veiled suggestions about harm befalling Prince Harry, with language so reckless it bordered on incitement against a member of the royal family. But Morgan didn't stop at mere insinuation. He explicitly expounded upon the grotesque mechanics of violence, detailing methods of dismemberment and incineration of a body, as though he were penning some macabre instruction manual rather than a column in a major British publication. The sheer depravity of putting such imagery into print, attaching it to a living prince, remains breathtaking in its audacity. And what makes it even more unconscionable is the deafening silence that followed from Buckingham Palace, from King Charles III, from Prince William. That silence, its complicity, plain and simple. The inflammatory rhetoric that crossed every line. What began as Morgan's initial article in the Sun tabloid has since metastasized into something far more sinister through his subsequent commentary, a deliberate expansion upon those disturbing themes that no civilized society should tolerate. Morgan didn't merely let his vile words hang in the air. He doubled down, he elaborated, he painted a grotesque picture that escalated from dangerous implication to explicit instruction. This wasn't hyperbole or heated opinion. This was the public amplification of threats against a member of the royal family, broadcast to millions, normalizing the language of violence, dismemberment, and destruction. The escalation of this dangerous rhetoric, left unchallenged by those with the power and platform to condemn it, represents not just a failure of decency, but an active complicity in the toxicity. When someone with Morgan's reach expounds in graphic detail about how one might dispose of a human being, royal or otherwise, and the institution remains silent, that silence becomes deafening. It becomes consent. It becomes an unspoken agreement that such language is permissible, that threats couched in the guise of commentary are somehow acceptable, that the bounds of civilized discourse no longer exist. 790 days of that silence is not oversight, it's a choice. The deafening silence from the palace. What makes this nightmare scenario even more chilling is the deafening silence from those who should be most appalled, the very family Piers Morgan's vile screed targeted. King Charles III, now over 2 years into this horror show, has said precisely nothing. Not a word. Not a carefully worded statement through a spokesperson. Not even the barest acknowledgement that his son was publicly discussed as a murder and dismemberment candidate in a national newspaper. Prince William, equally culpable in his silence, has offered no public statement, no condemnation, no hint that he finds anything remotely disturbing about a prominent media figure writing a how-to guide for killing his brother. The palace machinery, normally so quick to issue statements about the correct protocol for curtsying or the proper shade of beige for official events, has been completely, utterly absent. No official response, no action, no consequences, just silence. And that silence, let's be crystal clear about this, is complicity. When you stand by and say nothing while someone fantasizes in print about murdering your child, your brother, your family member, you are making a choice. That choice is to permit it. That choice is to normalize it. That choice is to signal that some lives matter less than others, that some family members are expendable, that some hatreds are acceptable. The Windsor silence isn't neutrality. It's endorsement. The deafening silence when royals choose complicity over condemnation. The argument for complicity isn't complicated, and it isn't particularly nuanced either. When someone with a platform as poisonous as Piers Morgan's publishes what can only be described as a grotesque fantasy about murdering, dismembering and incinerating a member of your family, and you say that silence reverberates louder than any denial ever could. It's been 790 days, not 790 hours, not 790 minutes, but 790 entire rotations of this godforsaken planet since Morgan's vile screed appeared in the sun. And in all that time, King Charles III and Prince William have maintained a silence so complete, so absolute, that it can only be interpreted as tacit approval of the violent rhetoric aimed at Prince Harry. This isn't about rising above it or maintaining dignity. Those are convenient shields behind which institutions hide when they'd rather not confront inconvenient truths. Public figures, particularly those draped in the ermine and crowns of monarchy, carry a responsibility that extends beyond ribbon-cutting and wave practicing. They have an obligation to draw lines in the sand when threats, even those couched in Morgan's characteristic sneering prose, are made against their own flesh and blood. Their inaction doesn't exist in a vacuum. It metastasizes through public discourse like a malignancy, signaling to every tabloid hack and keyboard warrior that such language is permissible, that imagining violence against Harry is somehow acceptable dinner conversation in polite society. And when those who should be the first to condemn instead choose the coward's path of silence, they don't just fail Harry. They fail every person who looks to public figures to model basic human decency, and they render the public square a more dangerous place for everyone who dares to step outside institutional protection. The deafening silence, when institutions fail to hold their own accountable. What's perhaps most chilling about this entire saga isn't just Morgan's grotesque fantasizing about murdering and dismembering a member of the royal family. It's the thunderous silence that followed. Where were the professional consequences? Where was his editor at The Sun, that bastion of journalism demanding accountability? Where was the Press Complaints Commission, that supposedly vigilant guardian of ethical standards? Crickets. Morgan continues his career unscathed, hopping from platform to platform, his vile words apparently forgiven, or worse, forgotten, by an industry that should have cast him out the moment his sadistic screed went to print. The Sun's editorial oversight, if it existed at all, clearly deemed graphic descriptions of royal murder and dismemberment as acceptable content, which tells you everything you need to know about tabloid journalism's ethical boundaries, or rather, the complete absence thereof. When writers can fantasize in print about incinerating human bodies without facing so much as a slap on the wrist, we've crossed into territory where standards have become a quaint relic of a bygone era. And the silence from King Charles III and Prince William? That silence speaks volumes. It's complicity wrapped in royal protocol, a tacit acceptance that some lives, even within their own family, are expendable enough that threatening them warrants no response, no condemnation, no consequences whatsoever. The unrelenting wait of 790 days. 790 days. That's how long the clock has been ticking since Piers Morgan penned that grotesque piece in The Sun, casually musing about how the royals might bump off Prince Harry, then elaborating with stomach-turning specificity about dismembering and incinerating his body. 790 days of silence from King Charles III and Prince William, a silence that speaks volumes louder than any carefully crafted palace statement ever could. Because here's the thing about silence in the face of such venom. It's not neutrality, it's complicity. And the public hasn't forgotten, not by a long shot. Social media continues to roil with demands for accountability, with supporters of Prince Harry pointing out again and again that if such violent rhetoric had been aimed at William or Kate, the palace machinery would have ground into gear within hours. The continued relevance of this 790-day timeline isn't just about keeping score, it's about holding a mirror up to a media landscape that traffics in cruelty, and a royal institution that appears willing to tolerate that cruelty when it's directed at the spare. Calls for systemic change in media regulation grow louder with each passing day, with commentators and advocates arguing that this isn't just about one vile columnist and one deafening silence. It's about an entire ecosystem that permits, profits from, and protects such toxicity. The conversation refuses to die because the wound refuses to heal. And perhaps that's exactly as it should be until someone, somewhere, finally takes responsibility.